He had everything money could buy, except love, until the woman who cleaned his house cleaned his heart instead. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting golden lines across the polished marble floor. The air was still, the kind of stillness that feels like it's holding its breath before something changes forever. Luna stood in the middle of the grand kitchen, a small black folder trembling in her hands. Her heart thudded as her eyes scanned the words again. Petition for shared custody modification. Samuel Derek Campbell. For a long moment, she couldn't move. She shouldn't have seen it. She knew that. But the words had already carved themselves into her mind. Unsuitable environment. Emotional absence. Unfit father. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to slow her heartbeat. "Oh, Derek," she whispered. Suddenly, everything made sense. The long nights he spent at the office, the constant phone calls, the way he stared at Sam like the boy was a fragile promise he didn't know how to keep. He wasn't cold. He was terrified. And now she knew the powerful, composed man who ran million-dollar meetings every morning was fighting a battle no one else could see. Luna gathered the papers carefully and slipped them back into the folder. Her throat was tight, and her eyes burned. For the first time since she'd started working there, she didn't see Derek as her intimidating boss. She saw him as a father, a man, human, flawed, hurting. When she heard Sam calling her name from upstairs, she quickly wiped her face, took a deep breath, and smiled, because that's what she always did. She smiled, even when her heart was breaking for someone else. Later that evening, Derek came home. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the dishwasher and Sam's laughter echoing from the playroom. Luna stood by the counter drying her hands when Derek walked in. His expression was unreadable, the usual calm mask. But she noticed the faint, dark circles under his eyes. "Good evening, Mr. Campbell," she said softly. He paused. "Good evening, Luna. Was Sam all right today?" "He was wonderful," she said, her voice steady. "We made a fort out of blankets and read The Little Prince. He said it's his favorite now." For the first time, Derek's lips curved slightly. "He told me that book reminded him of his mother." There was a quiet beat. Luna nodded. "It reminds me of you, actually." That caught him off guard. "Of me?" She smiled gently. "A man who's surrounded by stars but still feels lonely." The silence that followed was heavy but not cold. It was the silence of someone realizing he'd been seen, really seen, for the first time in years. Derek looked at her, something raw flickering in his eyes. He wanted to say something, but he didn't. Instead, he placed the black folder on the counter. "You found this, didn't you?" he asked quietly. Luna froze. She tried to speak, but her throat tightened. I didn't mean to. It fell and..." He lifted a hand. "It's all right." His voice wasn't angry. It was tired, weary. "I figured you would have noticed. You're observant." She bit her lip. "I didn't tell anyone. I wouldn't." "I know." His gaze softened for a second. "It doesn't matter anymore anyway. They're trying to take him from me." Luna felt her chest ache. "Because they think you don't care enough?" Derek's jaw clenched. He looked down, his voice rough. "Because I'm not what they think a father should be. I work too much. I don't show emotions. I barely sleep. Maybe they're right." Luna took a slow step forward. "No, they're wrong." He looked up sharply. "You care," she said simply. "I've seen it. Every morning you check if Sam's eaten, every night you stand at his door when you think no one's watching. You love him, Derek. You're just afraid to show it." Her words landed like sunlight breaking through clouds. Derek exhaled shakily, the tension in his shoulders faltering for the first time. "I don't know how to be a father," he admitted. "Elizabeth, Sam's grandmother, she says I am too much like my own father, cold, absent, unfit. Luna hesitated. Then she said quietly, "Maybe you just need someone to remind you you're not him." Derek's eyes met hers, really met hers, and for a moment, the room felt smaller, warmer. Something unspoken pulsed between them. Over the next few weeks, everything began to change. Derek started coming home earlier, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He'd peek into the kitchen just to see Luna teaching Sam how to stir pancake batter or sitting on the floor helping him draw a rocket ship that looked suspiciously like Derek's office tower. One evening, Derek joined them. No suit, no phone. Just a father, a child, and the woman who had unknowingly brought light back into their world. "Okay, Mr. Campbell," Luna said teasingly, handing him a whisk. "Let's see if the billionaire knows how to make pancakes." Derek gave her a dry look. "I can run a company with 12 subsidiaries. I think I can handle this." 5 minutes later, there was batter on his shirt, flour on Sam's nose, and Luna laughing so hard she nearly dropped the pan. It was the first real laughter that had echoed through the Campbell mansion in years, and it did something to Derek, something irreversible. Later that night, after Sam had fallen asleep, Derek found Luna in the kitchen, quietly cleaning up. "You didn't have to stay," he said softly. "I wanted to," she replied without looking up. "Besides, someone has to save this kitchen from your cooking disasters." He chuckled, a low, unfamiliar sound. "I deserve that." Then, as she wiped the counter, he said quietly, "Luna, thank you." She turned to him, confused. "For what?" "For tonight. For reminding me that my home isn't just walls and silence." Her eyes softened. "Homes aren't built from walls, Derek. They're built from hearts." There was a pause. Then he said, almost to himself, "You always say things like that. Things that make sense when everything else doesn't." Luna smiled faintly. "That's what happens when you live in someone else's world. You start seeing the cracks they can see." He looked at her then, a long, quiet look that carried both gratitude and something deeper. "You've changed this house," he said finally. "And me." Luna's breath caught. "You were already changing. You just needed someone to remind you you're human." Derek stepped closer, his voice low. "Maybe I needed you." She didn't answer. She couldn't. But the silence between them was full, of understanding, of something beginning. Days passed, and the custody hearing drew closer. Derek's composure cracked again. But this time he wasn't alone. Luna stood by him every step, quietly but firmly. She helped him prepare, coached him on how to speak from the heart instead of the head. On the day of the hearing, Derek told the court something he'd never said before. "I used to think being a good father meant providing everything money could buy, but now I know when it's about being there, about showing love even when it scares you. My son taught me that, and so did someone else." His eyes found Luna sitting in the back row, and she smiled through tears. When it was over, he won full custody. That night, when they returned home, Derek found Luna in the kitchen again, the same place where it had all begun. On the counter sat a cake, not a small, lonely one this time, but a beautiful homemade one with frosting unevenly spread and a candle glowing in the middle. Luna smiled softly. "Happy Victory Day, Mr. Campbell." He stepped closer. "You made this?" "Don't judge the icing," she said with a laugh. "I'm still learning." Derek reached out and took her hand, his touch gentle. "You've done more than enough, Luna." She blinked back tears. "It wasn't just me." "No," he said quietly, his thumb brushing against her knuckles. "It was us." The candle flickered between them, just like that night weeks ago. But this time, Luna wasn't alone. Derek leaned in slightly. "Make a wish," she whispered. "I already have." And as the flame danced between them, two hearts that had learned to heal together, Luna blew it out. The world went soft, warm, whole. And for the first time, the billionaire who once lived in silence found his home not in marble halls or glass towers, but in the quiet laughter and love of the woman who had melted his heart. The mansion felt different now, lighter. There were still marble floors and polished chandeliers, but laughter had begun to echo through the hallways again. Laughter that hadn't existed there in years. Sam's drawings now decorated the refrigerator door. A small potted succulent, Frederico, sat proudly on the kitchen windowsill, basking in the sunlight. And sometimes, when Luna hummed softly while cooking breakfast, Derek would stand quietly in the doorway, watching her with an expression that spoke of something he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Peace. Weeks turned into months, and life began to take on a new rhythm. Derek no longer left before sunrise. He joined Luna and Sam for breakfast, even if it meant arriving late to the office. On weekends, he cooked, terribly, but with effort, and Luna teased him until his laughter filled the room. Sam started calling Luna Miss Luna Sunshine because, as he said, she makes the whole house warm. And Derek couldn't have agreed more. He had built his empire on power, control, and logic. But Luna had taught him that love wasn't a weakness. It was the quiet strength he'd been missing all along. One afternoon, Derek stood in his office, staring out at the skyline. The city stretched endlessly, glass towers reflecting the sunset, golden and sharp. He used to feel powerful looking at it. Now he just felt distant. Luna's laughter drifted faintly from the garden below. She was playing with Sam, chasing him across the grass. Derek found himself smiling, a soft, genuine smile that surprised even him. He picked up his phone, then hesitated. What am I waiting for? He thought. He wasn't a man who second-guessed himself. But this was different. This wasn't a business deal or a corporate merger. This was his heart, and that, he'd learned, couldn't be negotiated, only offered. That evening, as twilight melted into soft shades of blue, Luna stood by the balcony outside the kitchen, holding a cup of tea. The night breeze lifted her hair, and the city lights flickered like stars below. She heard quiet footsteps behind her. "Beautiful night," Derek said, his voice low and calm. She turned, smiling faintly. "It is." He stepped beside her, his gaze following the horizon. For a moment, they just stood there, two souls who'd spent so long in their own worlds, now standing in the same one. "I've been meaning to thank you again," he said softly, "for everything you've done for Sam, and for me." She shook her head. "You don't have to thank me, Derek. You did it all yourself. You just needed someone to remind you what love looks like." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the emotion in his eyes, unguarded and real. That someone was you. The words hit her like a soft wave. Her chest tightened, but it wasn't sadness. It was the fragile beauty of hearing what she'd been too afraid to hope for. "Derek," she whispered. He took a step closer, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with the night air. "You came into my life when everything was falling apart," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I thought I was broken beyond repair, that all I could offer was structure, not warmth. But you—" He paused, searching for the right words. "You reminded me that there's more to life than success, that it's okay to laugh, to feel, to care." Luna blinked back tears. "You didn't need me to remind you. That was already inside you, Derek. You just forgot where to look." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but I never would have found it without you." The silence stretched between them, not empty but charged. Then gently, Derek reached into his pocket and pulled something out, a small box. Luna's breath caught. "What's that?" He opened it. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple, elegant, with a tiny charm shaped like a crescent moon. "It's not much," he said quietly, "but it reminded me of you. Light in dark places." Her fingers trembled as he took her hand and clasped the bracelet around her wrist. "Derek," she breathed. His thumb brushed the edge of her hand, lingering. "You once told me homes aren't made of walls, they're made of hearts. I didn't understand that until now. You've become my home, Luna." Her eyes shimmered. "Are you saying this because you feel grateful, or because you—" He didn't let her finish. He leaned in slowly, his forehead resting against hers. "Because I love you." The words were quiet, but they carried the weight of everything he'd held back for years. Luna's heart raced. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more. When their lips met, it wasn't desperate. It was soft, reverent, full of unspoken promises. A kiss that felt like a beginning, not an ending. And when they pulled away, Luna laughed through her tears. "You know, Mr. Campbell, this is wildly unprofessional." Derek chuckled, his hand still cupping her cheek. "Then maybe it's time I promote you to something else." "Promote me?" she teased. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that made her knees weak. "To family." Months later, the mansion was filled with sunlight and laughter again. Not the sterile quiet of wealth, but the warm, messy noise of life. Luna stood by the kitchen counter, wearing one of Derek's shirts, her hair tied up as she helped Sam pour chocolate into cupcake molds. Federico, the little succulent, stood proudly beside the mixing bowl, still thriving. Derek entered, rolling up his sleeves. "You two are making a disaster in my kitchen again, I see." "Correction," Luna said, grinning. "We're making memories." He walked over, kissed her temple, and wrapped an arm around her waist. "Then let's make a few more." Sam giggled. "Dad, you're being mushy again." Luna laughed, leaning back into Derek's embrace. "Let him. He's making up for lost time." Derek looked down at her, his expression soft. "Every second with you feels like time I never knew I needed." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. Inside, love bloomed in quiet, ordinary moments, the kind that didn't need grand gestures or marble walls to feel rich. Because for Derek Campbell, the billionaire who once believed life was about control and success, happiness now lived in the simplest things: a child's laughter, a shared kitchen mess, and the woman who taught him what love truly meant. And for Luna Parker, who once celebrated her birthday alone with a tiny cake and a crooked candle, her wish had finally come true. She was home.